The day my daughter Emma brought home her new boyfriend, I knew something was wrong with him. He stood in my doorway like he had never seen sunlight before. His skin was too pale, almost gray, and when he smiled at me, his teeth looked too sharp. Emma glowed next to him like she had found the most wonderful thing in the world. "Dad, this is Marcus," she said, her voice full of joy. "I told you about him, remember?" I did remember. She had talked about him for weeks, but seeing him made my stomach feel sick. The way he moved was too slow, too careful, like he was afraid his body might fall apart. Marcus reached out his hand to shake mine. His fingers were ice cold, and I could feel how thin his skin was. It felt like touching wet paper that might tear if I squeezed too hard. "Nice to meet you, sir," he said, and his voice sounded like it came from far away. The handshake lasted too long. Marcus held my hand in his cold grip and stared into my eyes like he was trying to read my thoughts. I pulled my hand back, but the cold feeling stayed on my skin for hours afterward. Emma didn't notice anything strange, but I saw how Marcus watched her every move. That night at dinner, I watched him push food around his plate. He never took a real bite, just moved the meat and potatoes from one side to the other. Emma ate enough for both of them, chatting about school and her friends. She kept touching his arm and smiling at him like he was the best thing that ever happened to her. "Marcus works at the flower shop downtown," Emma said. "The one that sells roses and stuff for weddings." I had driven past that place many times. It was old and run down, with windows so dirty you could not see inside. The building always gave me a creepy feeling, like something bad had happened there. "How long have you worked there?" I asked him. Marcus looked at me for a long time before answering. His eyes were strange, like looking into deep water at night. They seemed too old for his face, like he had seen things that most people never see. "A while now," he said. "I like working with things that used to be alive." The way he said it made me want to leave the room. Emma laughed like he had made a joke, but I did not think it was funny at all. There was something hungry in his voice when he talked about dead things. Marcus never blinked enough. Most people blink without thinking about it, but Marcus would stare for long minutes without moving his eyes. When he did blink, it was slow and deliberate, like he had to remember how to do it. His breathing was also wrong, too shallow and too quiet. After they left to go to a movie, I could not stop thinking about Marcus. I called my brother Tom, who worked as a cop in town. "Tom, do you know anything about a guy named Marcus, who works at the flower shop on Pine Street?" "That old place?" Tom said. "I thought it closed down years ago. Nobody goes there anymore. Why do you ask?" I told him about Emma's new boyfriend, and Tom got quiet for a minute. I could hear him shuffling papers in the background. "Listen, Dave," he said. "I'll ask around, but that whole area gives me the creeps. We get weird calls from that part of town sometimes. People hearing things at night, strange smells, that kind of stuff. Last month, Mrs. Peterson called about voices coming from that flower shop at 3 in the morning. "What kind of voices?" I asked, but Tom didn't have more details. He promised to look into it and call me back. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and tried to remember everything I could about Marcus. The more I thought about him, the more wrong he seemed. The next few days, Emma spent all her time with Marcus. She would leave right after school and not come home until very late. When she did come home, she looked tired and pale. Her eyes had dark circles under them, and she moved slower than usual. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked her one morning. She was eating breakfast, but she only picked at her food. "You look sick, honey." Emma had always been a good eater, but now she barely touched her cereal. Her favorite orange juice sat untouched beside her plate. "I'm fine, Dad," she said, but her voice was weak. "Marcus and I just stay up late talking. He has so many interesting stories to tell." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes like it used to. The smile looked forced, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Emma had always been full of energy. She played soccer and ran track, and she could talk for hours about her friends and school. But now she seemed drained, like someone had pulled the plug on her battery. She moved like an old person, careful and slow. I decided to drive by the flower shop that afternoon. The building looked even worse up close. The paint was peeling off the walls, and some of the windows were cracked. There was a sign in the window that said "Open," but it looked like it had been there for years. The glass was so dirty I couldn't see through it. The parking lot was empty except for dead leaves and trash. Weeds grew through cracks in the concrete, and the whole place smelled like something rotting. I couldn't imagine anyone wanting to buy flowers from such a depressing place. Yet Emma said Marcus worked there every day. I parked across the street and waited. After about an hour, I saw Marcus come out of the shop. He moved like he was walking underwater, slow and strange. What scared me most was that he cast no shadow on the sidewalk, even though the sun was bright. The concrete beneath his feet looked darker, like he was draining the light from it. Marcus looked around the parking lot like he was searching for something. When his gaze swept across my car, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. For just a moment, his eyes locked onto mine, and I saw something there that made my hands shake. It was hunger, pure and endless. He walked to the edge of the parking lot and stood there for several minutes, just staring at nothing. Then he turned and walked back into the shop. The whole time, his feet made no sound on the concrete. Even from across the street, I should have heard his footsteps, but there was only silence. That night, Emma did not come home for dinner. I called her phone, but she did not answer. By 10 o'clock, I was ready to call the police. Then I heard her key in the front door. The sound of that key turning was both a relief and a new worry. "Emma, where have you been?" I asked. She looked worse than before. Her skin was almost as pale as Marcus's now, and she moved like she was very tired. Her clothes hung loose on her frame, like she had lost weight in just a few days. "I was with Marcus," she said. "We were at his place." She started to walk upstairs to her room, but I stopped her. Something about the way she said, "his place," bothered me. Where did Marcus live? Emma had never mentioned an address. "Where does he live?" I asked. "I want his address." Emma turned around and looked at me with eyes that seemed too big for her face. They were sunken deeper than before, surrounded by darkness that makeup couldn't hide. "Why don't you trust him, Dad?" she said. "He makes me happy. Isn't that what you want?" But she didn't look happy. She looked like someone who was trying very hard to remember what happiness felt like. Before I could answer, she went upstairs and closed her door. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for a long time, listening. Usually, Emma would play music or talk on the phone with her friends. Tonight, there was only silence from her room. When I pressed my ear to her door, I couldn't even hear her moving around. I could not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's cold smile and the way Emma looked so tired. Around 3 in the morning, I heard something outside my window. It sounded like footsteps in the yard, but they were too slow and too quiet. I looked out the window and saw Marcus standing under the big oak tree. He was just standing there looking up at Emma's bedroom window. His skin looked even more gray in the moonlight, and I could see his breath in the cold air, even though it was warm outside. The strangest part was how still he stood. No shifting weight from foot to foot, no small movements that living people make without thinking. He was like a statue, perfectly motionless except for that visible breath. It was the only sign that he might be alive. I watched him for an hour. He never moved, never looked away from Emma's window. When the sun started to come up, he walked away into the woods behind our house. I had never seen anyone move so slowly and still cover so much ground. He seemed to glide rather than walk. After he disappeared into the trees, I went outside to look at the spot where he had been standing. The grass was brown and dead in a perfect circle around the oak tree. Everything else in the yard was green and healthy, but that one spot looked like winter had touched it. The next morning, Emma looked even worse. She could barely eat her cereal, and her hands shook when she picked up the spoon. "Emma, I think you need to see a doctor," I said. Her weight loss was becoming serious, and the dark circles under her eyes were getting deeper. "I don't need a doctor," she said. "I just need to spend more time with Marcus. He makes me feel better." But she did not look better. She looked like she was getting sick from something I could not see. Something was eating away at her from the inside. Emma had always been strong and healthy. She rarely got sick, and when she did, she bounced back quickly. But this was different. This looked like something was slowly draining the life out of her day by day, hour by hour. That day, I called Tom again. "I need you to help me," I said. "Something is very wrong with this Marcus guy." I told him about seeing Marcus in the yard and how Emma was getting worse every day. I also mentioned the dead grass under the oak tree. "Meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street," Tom said. "I found out some things about that flower shop that you need to know." His voice sounded serious, and I could tell he had discovered something important. The coffee shop was busy and public, a good place to talk without being overheard. When I got to the coffee shop, Tom was already there. He looked worried, and he had a file folder with him. "Dave, I did some checking on that flower shop," he said. "It has been closed for 15 years. He opened the folder and showed me official documents from the city. "That can't be right," I said. "Emma said Marcus works there." Tom shook his head and pulled out more papers. The building permits, the business license, the final inspection report. They all showed the same thing. The flower shop had been abandoned since 1998. The last owner was a man named Marcus Webb, Tom said. He died in 1998. Heart attack in the back room of the shop. They found his body 3 days later. My hands started to shake as I looked at the papers. The death certificate was right there in black and white. "That has to be a different Marcus," I said, but I knew it was not. Tom pulled out an old newspaper clipping with a photo. It was the same face, the same pale skin, the same cold eyes. The headline read, "Local florist found dead. Business closes after owner's sudden death." The newspaper article said Marcus Webb had lived alone above the flower shop. He had no family, no close friends. Neighbors described him as quiet and strange, someone who kept to himself. The reporter mentioned that several people had complained about odd smells coming from the shop in the weeks before his death. "Dave, I don't know what your daughter is mixed up in," Tom said, "but this is not normal. We need to get her away from whoever this guy really is." Tom's face was pale, and I could see he was as scared as I was. As a cop, he had seen a lot of strange things, but this was beyond normal experience. I drove home as fast as I could. Emma was not there, but I found a note on the kitchen table. "Dad, I'm going to stay with Marcus for a few days. Don't worry about me. I love you. The handwriting was Emma's, but it looked weak and shaky, like she could barely hold the pen. The note felt cold to the touch, even though it was sitting in warm sunlight. When I held it up to the light, I could see that the ink was strange, darker in some places than others. It looked like it had been written with something other than a normal pen. I grabbed my car keys and drove to the flower shop. This time I was going inside. The front door was locked, but the back door was open. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The smell hit me immediately. Old flowers mixed with something sweet and rotten. The shop was full of dead plants and empty flower pots. Everything was covered in dust, like no one had been there for years, but there were fresh footprints in the dust, 2 sets of them. One set was small, like Emma's shoes. The other set was larger and deeper, like they had been made by someone very heavy. "Emma!" I called out. "Emma, are you here?" I heard something from the back room, like someone moving around. I walked toward the sound, and my feet made loud noises on the old wooden floor. Every step echoed in the empty space. The shelves were lined with dead flowers in various stages of decay. Some were just brown stems, others were covered in white mold. The smell got stronger as I moved deeper into the shop. It was the smell of death, of things that should have been buried long ago. The back room was dark, but I could see Emma sitting in a chair. She was so still that for a second I thought she might be sleeping. "Emma?" I said softly. When she didn't respond, I stepped closer and felt my stomach drop. She turned to look at me and I almost screamed. Her skin was gray like Marcus's and her eyes looked empty. She was so thin that her clothes hung on her like they were too big. Her cheekbones stuck out sharply and her lips were almost white. "Hi, Dad," she said, but her voice sounded far away. It was like hearing an echo of my daughter, a faint copy of the girl I knew. Her smile was weak and didn't change the emptiness in her eyes. "We're leaving," I said. "Right now." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away from me. Her movement was slow and deliberate, like she was moving through thick water. When I touched her arm, her skin felt cold and papery. "I can't leave," she said. "Marcus needs me. He's been alone for so long." That's when I saw him. Marcus was standing in the shadows near the back wall. In the dark, I could see right through him, like he was made of smoke and moonlight. "She belongs with me now," Marcus said. His voice echoed in the empty room, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "She gives me what I need to stay here." I realized what was happening. Emma was getting weaker because Marcus was taking something from her, something that kept her alive. Marcus stepped out of the shadows, and I could see him more clearly. His clothes were old-fashioned, like something from decades ago. They hung on his thin frame like they were still in the style from when he first died. His skin was not just pale, it was gray-white, like old newspaper. "You're killing her," I said. Marcus smiled, and I could see that his teeth were not just sharp. They were broken and yellow like old bones. Some of them were missing entirely, leaving dark gaps in his mouth that seemed to go on forever. "Not killing," he said. "Sharing. Soon she will be like me, and we can be together forever." Emma looked at him with love in her eyes, but I could see that she was dying. Whatever he was doing to her was draining her life away, bit by bit. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly. I could see my breath in the air, and frost began forming on the windows. Marcus was drawing energy from everything around him, the air, the light, and most of all, from Emma. I grabbed Emma's arm and pulled her toward the door. She was so light that I could lift her easily, but she fought against me. "No, Dad," she said. "I want to stay with him." Her voice was weak, but there was panic in it. She really believed she wanted to stay. Marcus moved to block the door, but when I tried to push past him, my hand went right through his body. He was cold like ice water, and touching him made my arm feel numb. "You cannot take her," he said. "She is mine now." The cold spread up my arm and into my chest. For a moment I felt what Emma must have been feeling, a draining sensation like something was pulling the warmth and life out of my body. I understood then how Marcus fed, how he kept himself in this world. "She's my daughter," I said. I picked Emma up and carried her toward the front of the shop. She was too weak to fight much, but she kept calling for Marcus. Her voice was getting fainter, like she was falling asleep. Behind us, I heard Marcus making a sound like wind through dead leaves. The temperature in the shop dropped so fast I could see my breath. All around us, the dead flowers started moving like they were alive again. Their brown petals rustled and whispered. The dead plants began to reach toward us with withered stems and branches. They moved slowly but with purpose, like they were trying to help Marcus keep us in the shop. Some of the larger plants had grown into twisted shapes that looked almost like grasping hands. I ran for the front door, but it slammed shut before I could reach it. The windows went dark, even though it was still daylight outside. Marcus appeared in front of us, and now he looked more like a skeleton than a person. His skin was stretched tight over sharp bones. "You cannot leave," he said. "She has already given me too much. If she goes now, she will die anyway." I looked down at Emma in my arms. Her breathing was very slow, and her skin felt cold. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe it was already too late. But I couldn't give up. Even if Emma was dying, I wouldn't let her become like Marcus. I wouldn't let her spend eternity trapped in this horrible place, feeding on other people's children. She deserved better than that, even if better meant death. "Then I'll take her to a hospital," I said. Marcus laughed, and the sound made the dead flowers shake on their stems. It was a sound without warmth or joy, like wind blowing through an empty house. "No hospital can help her now," he said. "Only I can save her. Let her stay, and she will live forever with me." I knew he was lying. Whatever he was offering wasn't life. It was something else, something hungry and cold that wore life like a mask. I looked around the shop for another way out. There was a window near the back that was smaller than the others. If I could break it, maybe we could escape. I carried Emma toward the window, but Marcus moved to stop me. This time, when he reached for us, his hands felt solid. His fingers were like ice, and they gripped my arm so tight I thought he might break the bone. "She stays here," he said. His grip was stronger than any living person's, cold and unyielding. Marcus's face was close to mine now, and I could see the hunger in his eyes. It wasn't just hunger for Emma. It was hunger for life itself, for warmth and breath and beating hearts. He had been starving for 15 years, and Emma was the first person who had given him what he needed. "Emma," I said, "look at me. Really look at me." Emma opened her eyes, and for a second they looked like they used to. I could see my real daughter in there fighting to come back. "Do you want to die?" "I don't want to die," she whispered, "but I love him." I could see the real Emma fighting to come back, fighting against whatever Marcus had done to her mind. The love she felt for him wasn't real. It was something he had created to keep her here. "If you love him, then you know this is wrong," I said. "Love doesn't hurt people. Love doesn't make you sick." Emma looked at Marcus, then back at me. I could see the confusion in her eyes, the battle between what she felt and what she knew. "I feel so tired, Dad," she said. "I feel like I'm disappearing." That was all I needed to hear. Marcus had been slowly erasing my daughter, taking pieces of her until there would be nothing left but an empty shell for him to inhabit. I threw my shoulder against the small window and it broke with a loud crash. Glass cut my arm, but I didn't care. Cold air rushed in from outside, and with it came the smell of living things, grass and trees and flowers that grew in real soil. Marcus screamed behind us, and the sound was like nothing I had ever heard. It was rage and loneliness and hunger all mixed together. It was the sound of something that had been denied its prey, something that had been cheated of the life it needed to survive. The scream shattered the remaining windows in the shop. Dead flowers exploded into dust, and the old wooden shelves split and cracked. The whole building shook like it was about to fall down. Marcus was putting all his remaining energy into trying to stop us. I climbed through the broken window, pulling Emma with me. Glass cut both of us, but the pain felt good after the cold numbness of Marcus's touch. The sunlight outside hit us like a warm blanket, and I felt the life flowing back into my body. Emma gasped and color started to come back to her face. The sunlight seemed to push back the gray pallor that had been taking over her skin. She blinked in the bright light like someone waking up from a long, dark dream. Behind us, Marcus was still screaming, but he could not follow us into the light. I could see him pressed against the broken window, but he couldn't cross the threshold. The sunlight formed a barrier that he could not pass through. His face was twisted with rage and desperate hunger. He reached toward us with hands that were now just bone and shadow, but they stopped at the edge of the window frame. The sunlight burned him, made him fade and flicker like a candle in the wind. I carried Emma to my car and drove straight to the hospital. The doctor said she was suffering from severe malnutrition and exhaustion. They put her on IV fluids and kept her for 3 days. They ran tests but couldn't find any specific cause for her condition. It's like something was draining her energy, one doctor told me. But we can't find any medical reason for it. Sometimes the human body just gives up. We see it in cases of severe depression or trauma. I didn't tell him what had really happened. He wouldn't have believed me anyway. Emma slept for most of the first day. When she finally woke up, she looked confused and scared. "Where am I?" she asked. "Where's Marcus?" I explained that she was in the hospital, that she had been very sick. "I don't remember much," Emma told me while she was getting better. It was like being in a dream all the time. A really nice dream, but also scary. She looked sad and confused. "I really thought I loved him." Emma remembered meeting Marcus, but everything after that was fuzzy. She remembered feeling happy and loved, but she also remembered being tired all the time. She remembered wanting to spend every moment with him, but she couldn't remember why. "He made you think that," I said. "That wasn't real love." Emma nodded, but I could see she was still trying to understand what had happened to her. The doctor said it might take time for her memories to come back completely. When we got home, I boarded up all the windows on the first floor and put new locks on the doors. Tom came by to check on us, and I told him everything that had happened. He believed me, which was more than I had hoped for. "We should burn down that flower shop," Tom said. "Make sure he can't hurt anyone else." But when we drove by the next day, the building was gone. There was just an empty lot with some old foundation stones and dead grass. The lot looked like it had been empty for years. The foundation stones were cracked and covered with moss, and weeds grew up through the broken concrete. There was no sign that a building had ever stood there, no debris or burned remains. "Did we imagine the whole thing?" Tom asked. But I knew we hadn't. The cuts on my arms from the broken window were real. Emma's hospital records were real. The dead grass under my oak tree was real. Marcus had been there, and now he was gone. Emma got better over the next few weeks. She gained weight, and her color came back. She started hanging out with her old friends again, and smiling like she used to. But sometimes at night, I would catch her looking out her bedroom window like she was waiting for someone. The first time I saw her doing this, my blood turned to ice. I thought Marcus might be coming back, that somehow he had survived the sunlight and was trying to reclaim her. But when I looked outside, there was nothing there but empty yard and healthy grass. "Do you miss him?" I asked her one evening. Emma was quiet for a long time before she answered. She was sitting by her window, but this time she was just looking at the stars, not searching for anyone. "Sometimes," she said. "Not him exactly, but the way he made me feel at first, like I was the most important person in the world." She looked sad. I know it wasn't real, but it felt real. I understood what she meant. Marcus had given her something that felt like love, but it was really hunger. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten the difference between loving someone and consuming them. He had offered her eternity, but it would have been an eternity of emptiness. Emma started seeing a therapist to help her understand what had happened. Dr. Sarah Martinez was a kind woman who specialized in helping people recover from abusive relationships. She didn't ask too many questions about the details, just focused on helping Emma heal. Abusive relationships often involve something called love bombing, Dr. Martinez explained to me. The abuser makes the victim feel incredibly special and loved at first, then gradually isolates them and drains their energy. It creates a powerful psychological bond that's very hard to break. 3 months later, Emma started dating a boy from her school named Jake. Jake was alive and warm and made her laugh. He had a summer job at the hardware store and drove an old truck that backfired when he started it. He was everything Marcus was not. Jake was nervous when he first came to meet me. His hands were sweaty, and he stumbled over his words, but his eyes were bright and alive. When he looked at Emma, I could see real affection there, the kind that wanted her to be happy and healthy. The first time Jake came to dinner, I watched Emma carefully. She ate her food and talked and smiled, and her eyes were bright and happy. Jake was nervous and polite, and when he shook my hand, his palm was sweaty and warm. "It's nice to meet you, sir," Jake said. His voice was clear and strong, and when he looked at Emma, I could see real love in his eyes, the kind of love that wants the other person to be happy and healthy and free. Jake brought Emma flowers on their first official date, bright yellow sunflowers that he had picked from his grandmother's garden. They were alive and warm and smelled like summer. Emma's face lit up when she saw them, and I knew she was going to be okay. After they left for their date, I sat in my kitchen and thought about Marcus. I wondered if he was still out there somewhere, looking for another lonely person to feed on. I hoped the sunlight had destroyed him, but I was not sure. That night I dreamed about the flower shop. In my dream, Marcus was still standing in the back room, waiting in the shadows. He was thinner than before, more transparent, like he was fading away without Emma's life to sustain him. "She was mine," he said in the dream. "You stole her from me." But his voice was weaker now, like an echo of an echo. The cold that had surrounded him was gone, replaced by a gray emptiness that seemed to stretch on forever. "She was never yours," I told him. "She was just lost for a while." When I woke up, I felt like something had been settled, like a door had finally been closed. The dream felt like a goodbye, like Marcus's final attempt to reach across from whatever place he had gone to. Emma is 22 now, and she's engaged to Jake. They're planning a spring wedding with real flowers from a shop across town, a bright place with big windows and living plants. Emma picked out white roses for her bouquet, and when she talks about the wedding, her face lights up. Jake proposed to Emma on the anniversary of the day I pulled her out of that flower shop. He didn't know the significance of the date, but I think Emma did. She said yes with tears in her eyes, and I knew they were tears of joy, not sadness. The wedding planning has been a happy distraction for Emma. She throws herself into choosing flowers and colors and music with an enthusiasm that reminds me of the girl she used to be before Marcus. She's gained back all the weight she lost, and her skin glows with health. Sometimes she asks me about that time when she was 17, about Marcus and what really happened. I tell her the truth, but I can see it's hard for her to believe. It seems like a strange dream to her now, something that happened to someone else. "I'm glad you saved me, Dad," she said to me last week, even though I didn't want to be saved at the time. We were sitting on the porch, watching Jake work on his truck in the driveway. The sound of his tools and his occasional curse words were the most normal living sounds I could imagine. "That's what parents do," I told her. "We protect our kids from things that want to hurt them, even when our kids don't understand the danger." Emma nodded and squeezed my hand. Her hand was warm and strong, full of life. "I understand now," she said. "Real love doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger." She was right. Love should build you up, not tear you down. It should add to your life, not drain it away. Jake finished working on his truck and came over to sit with us. He was covered in grease and sweat, but he was grinning because he had fixed whatever was wrong with the engine. "Want to go for a drive?" he asked Emma. "I want to test out the repairs." Emma jumped up eagerly, and they drove off together in the old truck. I could hear them laughing as they went around the corner, and the sound made me smile. That's what young love should sound like, full of joy and life and possibility. I never saw Marcus again after that day at the flower shop. Sometimes I drive by the empty lot where the shop used to be, just to make sure it's still gone. The grass has grown back and someone planted a small tree there. In the spring it blooms with tiny white flowers that smell sweet and clean. The tree grows bigger every year, and its roots go deep into the ground. Sometimes I wonder if it's growing from the spot where Marcus used to be, if somehow his presence in that place has been transformed into something living and good. Emma's wedding is next month. Jake asked me to walk her down the aisle, and I said yes. When I give her away, it will be to someone who loves her the right way, someone who wants to spend his life making her happy, instead of taking her life to make himself feel alive. Emma chose her wedding dress carefully. It's white with long sleeves and a high neck, covering the small scars on her arms from when we climbed through that broken window. She looks beautiful in it, but more importantly, she looks alive and happy and strong. The night before I started writing this story, I had another dream about Marcus. This time, he was just bones in an old suit, sitting alone in an empty room. He looked up at me with hollow eye sockets and opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. He was finally, truly dead. Emma's love had kept him alive for a while, but without it, he had faded back into nothing. That's what happens to things that only exist by stealing life from others. Eventually, they run out of victims and disappear. In the dream, I felt sorry for Marcus. He had been human once, probably lonely and afraid of dying. But instead of accepting death, he had chosen to become something else, something that could only survive by hurting others. It was a choice that had cost him everything that made him human. I'm telling this story now because I want other parents to know the signs. If your child starts dating someone who makes them weak instead of strong, someone who takes instead of gives, don't wait. Trust your instincts. Love should never hurt, and it should never make someone disappear piece by piece. Watch for the warning signs: sudden weight loss, isolation from friends and family, personality changes, and especially that drained, tired look that comes from having your life energy slowly stolen. Real love energizes people, makes them glow with happiness. False love drains them until there's nothing left. Emma is alive and happy and planning a future with someone who deserves her. Marcus is gone, returned to whatever dark place spawned him. And I sleep better at night knowing that my daughter fell in love with a dead man, but she didn't stay dead with him. The real victory wasn't saving Emma from Marcus. It was teaching her the difference between love and hunger, between being cherished and being consumed. Now she knows what real love feels like, and she'll never settle for anything less. Emma and Jake's relationship is built on mutual respect and support. They challenge each other to be better people, not to give up pieces of themselves. When one of them is tired, the other gives them energy. When one is sad, the other brings joy. That's how love is supposed to work. That's how this story ends. Not with death and darkness, but with life and light and a spring wedding with flowers that grew in the sun. Emma survived her encounter with the dead, and she came back stronger and wiser than before. The wedding invitations went out last week, and we've started getting responses from family and friends. Everyone is excited to celebrate Emma and Jake's love. Some of them remember when Emma went through her difficult period in high school, but none of them know the real story. I watch Emma now as she makes her final wedding preparations, and I see a young woman who knows the value of life and love. She doesn't take her happiness for granted because she knows how easily it can be threatened. She chose life over death, warmth over cold, reality over illusion. Tomorrow I will walk my daughter down the aisle and give her to a man who will spend his life adding to hers instead of subtracting from it. The flowers will be real, the sun will be shining, and every breath she takes will be full of life and possibility. That is how we defeat the things that want to consume us, not with violence or magic, but with love and life, and the simple choice to keep moving forward into the light.